Hi, I'm Gene Johnson, and I work for Dell Computers. I am the manager of EMEA Field Services Talent Management, and we're responsible for learning and development and leadership pipeline succession planning for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. My international experience started when I studied in Germany as a student, but years later I emigrated from America and I moved to New Zealand as an academic. And after that, I then moved to the UK. So although they were both English-speaking countries, I did have some interesting experiences dealing with cultural differences and how people perceive the impressions that are created. My first experience, I think, relates to being an American and using American textbooks in another country. And although one could say skeptically that, do you think that the theory is really the same, regardless of cross-cultural differences or anything else, that a lot of the theory still you could apply anywhere in the world. And whether that's true or not, it's still the impressions of the students or the business people who you're teaching, whether they want to buy into that. And a really practical example of that is that a lot of this theory was researched in larger companies and is designed for larger companies. So when you have a country like New Zealand, where most of the companies are very small, they say, well, this doesn't apply to me, or it doesn't apply to my business. Now, from what I know, most countries have the majority of their businesses are small businesses. So the New Zealand student doesn't want to hear that. But what they're really saying is the largest firm you may see in New Zealand could be a relatively small firm somewhere else. So that's a practical issue that is difficult to deal with. A related issue to that was when I was giving examples of companies that I thought they would know, like McDonald's or Wendy's, which was on the high street. They reacted against that, and some people would call New Zealanders a bit xenophobic. They're a small country, they've got big Australia over there, they've got, the motherland, the UK back here, and they have America sort of coming at them from their television screens, and they get a bit precious about, their own identity, so that's understood. So, when I was sort of attacked in a sense by some of my students, because they're much more vocal, the students in New Zealand, about using American examples, I could try to defend myself saying, well, I haven't lived here that long. But what I did over time was I started using examples of companies that were in New Zealand, but I still used the data from wherever it may have come from, such as America. Now that's deceptive, yes, I know, but in the end, it's really the example that's more important than whether it was a New Zealand firm or not, for most cases. Another example I had was when I went to the Seychelles when I was in New Zealand, and I was there to teach for a week at the Management Institute, the Seychelles Institute of Management. And it was a really extreme example of big company theory, small country. At the time, there were only 75,000 people in the Seychelles, and I imagine there's not many more now. But when you're talking about using things like ability tests, and you think that should apply anywhere, and you have somebody who works for a company that may have 200 people, you start thinking about issues of practicality. Could they afford it? Would it be relevant? And so I was talking to a woman who was the HR manager for the bus company. And in a small island like Mahe in the Seychelles, the buses run along the perimeter of the island, and it's very important because they have to run all day. So one of the issues she said they had was theft, because the bus drivers would simply take money. They're supposed to give you a ticket. I didn't get a ticket when I rode, but they're supposed to give you a ticket and the money should go in this box. But what some of them do is they put a handkerchief on top of the box and the money goes there and then they take from it. So I said, well, there's something called honesty tests, which will, look at the personality profile of the person, and you can predict whether or not they would, you should hire them. And her response was, well, first of all, I don't know if we can afford that, which again, is common sense. But also, I might know that person. He might be a distant cousin, and I would feel really uncomfortable having to test him. Plus, it's not part of the culture. So I think it's interesting things like that. They really test how do we approach unique countries or companies where sometimes the stuff we have, it may be best practice, but it may not be best practical for that situation.